Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Matthew Gialich. He's the founder and CEO of AstroForge. Now, AstroForge sounds like that big dwarf well, not dwarf, I guess. Well, I guess he was kind of like a smith in Guardians of the Galaxy. Is that what you guys are doing? Like you're making a huge space forge?
Kind of, very
Okay.
close. A little bit more brought back to Earth than Guardians of the Galaxy style.
Okay. Because that sounded pretty cool though.
Yeah, I mean, let me give you the overview of what we're doing, John. So I think, first and foremost, when it comes to kind of mining and what we're going after, to be very clear, we're going after precious metals. Specifically,
Mm-hmm.
we are starting with what are called the platinum group metals. Sure, everybody listening to this, I mean, if you're on an iPhone or you're looking at a screen, you're looking at platinum group metals, right? They're used in every electronic device we have. They're used in, when you hear about AI across the board, like, where do you think those chips come from? Platinum group metals are a key component in every single AI chip we have. And if you want to have any kind of renewable energy in the future, or really any kind of energy in the future, platinum group metals are a major part of that. There's a major problem with platinum group metals that we've had for a long time, and that is simply that we're running out and we don't have enough. I mean, this is obviously reflected in the price. These are very, very high priced elements that we go after. But I think
And
everybody listening,
this is platinum, palladium. Am I right about that? Is there like other?
it's 6 elements. Platinum,
Mhm.
I can list them off. You can look them up. It'd be a lot
Yeah.
easier. But it is 6 elements that we use in everyday manufacturing. So across the board, we've been running out of these for a while. Supply and demand curves have been out of whack on the platinum group metals for a long time. And if you're listening to this in the United States, you have even a bigger problem, which is we just don't have any platinum group metal ore really within the
Mm.
borders of the US. In fact, less than 2% of the world's reserves are here. They're in one mine in Montana. It's a big problem for us as we go into the future. And it's not only, it's a big problem for the world. We do know where platinum comes from, though. And in fact, every mine that we have on Earth, we believe, is actually the result of an asteroid impact. And so, the foundation of this company is essentially reversing that. We know where it comes from. Let's just go to where the best ore is, and that is in space. It is what we call on these objects called metal asteroids. Specifically, we're very interested in what are called near-Earth asteroids. So just to bring this back a little bit, we always confine these by missions that are 2 years or less. So if
Mhm.
it takes more than 2 years to get out, mine an asteroid, and come back, we're just not interested in it. And that's kind of how we've always thought about the problem. That is how we can increase the platinum group metal supply that we go into. And let's be honest, that's also how we can disrupt, which is a hugely damaging industry that we've been tolerating for a long time. I mean, if anybody ever looks up mines and sees what these things look like, these are not places you want to go on vacation, right? These are big holes in the ground where you have a ton of water waste, a ton of what we call tailings, which are just leftover ore that for some reason, one reason or another, we can't process. Um, Places where you have labor practices that we would like to admit don't exist on the surface of the earth, even though they do. And then, of course, you just have the pure carbon emissions. The hard thing about mines is they're not close to infrastructure in most cases. I mean, usually they're out in the middle of nowhere. We bring big diesel generators. We go out there and we just pollute the hell out of the environment to extract it and mine the earth. I mean, this has been going on for decades and will continue into the future unless we do something to disrupt it. And so we set out to AstroForge to do is, like I mentioned, go mine asteroids, go bring this whole damaging process off Earth. When you actually do the calculation of what it takes to make a rocket launch and go do this at the same scale as we have Earth-based mining, I mean, this is legitimately 4 orders of magnitude less carbon production than we would have on Earth just over the given year for mining the same amount of platinum group metals. It removes the water waste. It removes the human problem because obviously we would do this with autonomous vehicles that don't have humans on them. As much as I like the sci-fi story of going out and having belters and all this
Mhm.
crazy stuff, like, are really hard to keep alive in space and are no interest when it comes to actually running a commercial company in space. And we think we can systematically remove this problem from the planet. And that's what we set out to do here. Now,
Yeah. Go ahead.
go ahead, John.
No, I'm just so I've had a couple really good startups in the same vein, and I think the YC startups were especially potent in their vision. I mean, you're sitting in like a WeWork, it looks like, right? And I'm worried that how do you get this idea from you talking to me on a Zoom call to actually setting stuff up into space?
So I'm not in a WeWork. I'm actually in a room because I just don't want to sit on the
Okay.
open floor.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying. It's like we're talking about this. It's so far out, so wild, and so cool that I want you to succeed, and I want to know what first off, what is it going to take for you to succeed, and what is it going to take to make this kind of thing work?
Yeah, so let's look at this from two perspectives here. Number one is, I think it's important to recognize that essentially the human species has already done this before. We've had
Mm-hmm.
Hayabusa 1, Hayabusa 2, Osiris-Rex. They've gone out to asteroids, landed on them, taken samples, brought it back to Earth. Like, the physics problem here isn't a problem. This is really a cost problem. Can you do it for cheap enough? Can you raise enough money as a startup to actually hit these milestones and hit these missions and go through? I think, John, the best way to answer this is we're just going to go do it. I mean,
Okay.
coming up, we are on a flight called it's a Falcon 9, which is a rocket built by SpaceX that is owned by a company called Intuitive Machines.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to do their second attempt at landing on the moon, and we are going to be on that mission. Now, obviously, we have no interest in the moon, but that's a high energy launch that we will take off on. We will use the moon to essentially clock us out to the asteroid, so dictate where we go, and we are going to be launching in November the world's first commercial space mission, or the world's first commercial deep space mission to an asteroid.
Mm-hmm.
So, I understand that whenever you have a big vision company, whenever you have huge dreams, the hard part's always execution. The hard part is always execution and speed. I think that's what really can get people. And we've made a commitment that we're going to go as fast as possible. This is an extremely risky mission. It's extremely high risk, high reward. But we have a chance to make history coming up here in about 5 months. And I think these are the kind of big swings you have to take at a company like this to make it. It may go totally wrong. We may fail right off the launch pad. I have no idea, but I think we're all here working night and day to try to make this dream a reality and try to push the world a little bit farther than it's gone before. Keep in mind, this mission's total cost is less than $7 million. That is, I don't even know how much cheaper than
That's
than,
it's like 4 spacesuits, right? That's like
right. It's a totally different way to look at deep space exploration, deep space resources, and the deep space economy, and that is what really allows us to kind of change the whole narrative about how we've talked about asteroid mining in deep space for a long time.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. It's like this your ambition here is so not wild, but so all inclusive that I'm wondering if I'm a startup founder and I have a similar ambition, but I'm coming out of it from I don't know, a place where I can't really get access to investors, all that other good stuff. How do you build that? And how long did it take you guys to get to the point where you are now? That's the other question.
I'll answer the first one. I'll answer the second question first, which is we have been a company for 2.5 years at this point. So we started January 10th of 2022. Obviously, coming out of YC was a huge help to get us invested.
Yeah.
John, the reality is most people shouldn't start a company like this. This is extremely risky. You have to be able to look kind of risk in the face. And I mean, this is the honest truth when you go this big in a company. It's terrifying. You have to be able to say, yes, I totally agree. There's probably a 0.1% 0.1% chance my company succeeds. And then spend every waking moment of your life trying to increase those odds. And that's all you can do. And that's what we do here. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like most people that start companies want to see profit, want to have security, want to fall into that total human nature aspect of how much money am I going to make? Am I going to be able to support my family? Am I going to be able to do this? That's not this starting this kind of company. I mean, this is definitely kind of the crazy play where you go big or you go home, and there's a realistic chance we go home. We still have an excellent team here that spends, again, every waking moment trying to make that a reality because we have a chance to make such a big splash and to change history. And those are kind of the broken founders that will start companies like this. I don't recommend it.
Okay. That's pretty strong words. What did it take to convince people to hop on board 2.5 years ago, I guess?
I mean, look, when you talk about the investment standpoint and how we're looking at getting investors, I think it's pretty clear. We are going after a home run. This is a play to try to disrupt how precious metals are mined from the earth. I mean, that's a $16 trillion market cap. Like, this is a massive market that we want to go disrupt. And there's a whole bunch of companies taking smaller swings or trying to fix one piece in the supply chain as we go forward. This is this kind of holistic approach to replace mining. That's a huge swing that you can take. And I think investors believed in me and my co-founder, Jose, how we went through it, our background of being in space, to say, yeah, these guys might be crazy, but they have enough of a chance and enough of a background that I think they can, that they can hit some of these milestones and maybe show the world this is possible. And that's what we really had to prove at the beginning. I mean, keep in mind, me and Jose have over a decade and a half of experience in the aerospace community before we ever started this company. It was really early at SpaceX. I was early at a company called Virgin Orbit. And so we've been around the block for a little bit. And I think that gave us a lot of credibility going into an idea that maybe on the surface doesn't have a lot of credibility. And then what comes down to it, John, is there's no replacement for math. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can say whatever you want, you can tell whatever story you want as a founder. When investors are going to go diligence you, and you better be able to back it up with here's trajectories, here's fuel allocate, like here is the entire spacecraft, here's what we're going to do as we go forward, and show that from a math perspective, this can work. I think you look at a lot of deep tech companies, sometimes it's pretty easy to debunk the math behind them. And that's kind of a first order, they might be able to get some money from some investors, but that's going to stop them from the larger raises.
Now, isn't there wouldn't there be an impetus for like a non-diligent founder to give the investor who might, I mean, okay, so this is another question for you. Are your investors like space savvy? Like if you came with them with like a bunch of numbers and some trajectories, and they're like, "Oh, this looks cool. Here's $1 million." Is that what happened, or did they how deeply did they diligence you?
Yeah, so most investors are not going to be space savvy, but most
Mm-hmm.
investors also aren't idiots. So what they'll do is they'll just call their friends that are in the space industry. And this is how it kind of works,
Yeah.
right? They're going to use advisors and other people to diligence you as you go forward. So especially when it comes to the higher money, when you're taking on more, someone that's investing 10K, probably not going to get much diligence. And I think you could do that all day long with a great story. But when you start getting into the millions, absolutely. These investors didn't make it to where they are by being idiots. They
Mm-hmm.
made it, they know how to use resources in the right industry to pull that. And the good thing is that most of the people that are used to diligence us, me and Jose have called to ask them if we're idiots, right? So like there's this whole ecosystem in LA of space founders and
Mm-hmm.
people in space that all know each other. And I think that's what gives us a lot of credibility going in this.
So that's an interesting question. So what do you suggest for founders who need to idiot proof themselves, who need to do their own diligence on themselves to understand what investors are going to say?
Yeah, I mean, this is it. There's no substitute for learning. There's things called books. Go read them. Like if you don't understand something technically, I hate this whole concept of like a non-technical founder. We're
Mm-hmm.
not all born knowing calculus. You have to go learn it. So if you're a non-technical founder, go become a technical founder. It's not hard. Read a book. Spend every waking hour trying to figure out how to solve your problems and understand everything that you don't understand better than anybody else. That's it. Like there's no secret here, John. It's just brute force and it sucks. That's the
Mm-hmm.
honest here. And I think a lot of people try to get around that. I mean, and that doesn't stop, by the way. It even comes to the teams we have here. If there's something I don't believe or I don't think is right, what do? I go read about it. I go figure it out myself and say, am I wrong or am I right? And constantly trying to prove myself wrong on these things. And a lot of times I am. That's great. That's an awesome answer to get, right? But there's no substitute for learning.
Yeah. The saddest thing is what you just said should be told to every single founder in the world, but they rarely ever listen, unfortunately.
Uh, you
So
know, it's
what are you
it's
going to do?
I think that's why we've made being a founder of a company into this very sexy idea, and there's been TV shows on it. And the reality is that nobody wants to tell you is it's terrible. It sucks to a lot of things, and unless you're super passionate about what you're doing and you want to go make a huge dent, or you can't find your industry somewhere else, it's really not a job that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you talk to the top 1% and it can seem very pie in the sky and mighty, but most of the founders I talk to are multiple time failed founders and may never be successful. And that's a lot of who you're dealing with at the end of the day. So, go join a company. Don't go start one unless you're really passionate about what you're doing.
All right. Well, that's amazing advice because that's literally what I've tried to tell people, but they all believe they don't believe it. So what's the trajectory? I got a big giant idea. Do I go immediately and do my deck and do some trajectories for my rocket ship, or do I work for SpaceX or NASA or something for 10 years and then kind of work my way into the startup idea? It's a loaded question, but I think you're going to be able to answer it.
I tell everybody that if you need advice on how to be a founder, don't be a founder.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really that simple to me, right? Like this is not a game for the weak-minded or the thin-skinned. Like being a founder really sucks. It could be really terrible. Yeah, there's great times where it can be excellent and amazing, but it's a very difficult job to do. It's a very stressful job to do, and you have to be built correct to do that. And the reality is a lot of the world isn't, and that's fine. I don't think that's a knock at all. I wish I was someone in a way that could go work a union job 40 hours a week and be satisfied. That's just not my personality. And I
Mm-hmm.
recognize that and know that, right? I'm almost fundamentally broken in that regard. Um, and if you have to convince yourself otherwise, like just save yourself and everybody else around you the drama and the stress and don't do it. So I would say, go join a company, but also doing something that you're interested in and that's early enough where you're going to get visibility into what it's truly like to be a founder. Don't, it was this whole problem we've had for a while where people say, like, I'm going to go join a startup. That startup's raised $5 billion. That's not a startup.
It's not a startup.
That's that's not at least what I would call a startup. That's a late stage company.
Yeah.
As we've pushed out IPOs, joining Stripe today, great company, is not a startup, right?
Mhm.
Go join a company that's raised less than 10 million bucks. Go take a risk for a year at that company. Set out, I'm going to go here for 1 year. I'm going to suffer through everything. I'm going to figure it out. And in a year, you're going to have a lot of clarity on if this is something you think you can do, you're cut out to do, you formed your ideas and you can figure it out. Or you're going to say, this isn't for me. I really enjoy making a constant money and I'm going to go into banking or whatever, right? That's a perfectly viable way to go. And I don't think you should discredit yourself if that's what you choose.
Mm-hmm. So what's so you have a launch coming up in November, and when do we start getting platinum back?
On our current mission schedule, we will be getting the first load of platinum back well before the end of this decade. So for us, I think speed is the number one asset that we're going after. That's the only way we win. That's the only way we do it. And so again, high risk, high reward, John, is how we go about this. And there's a real chance that before the end of this decade, we are selling platinum on the spot market and hopefully starting to turn massive profits.
Space platinum. Are you guys going to have a special, like the special branding?
I mean, my objective is after the first one, absolutely, like we sold to collectors and people in space, right?
Yeah.
But my hope is that very shortly after that, we bring back so much that we've already saturated that market and nobody cares, and we have to bring back it on the commodity markets. Like that means success as a company. But absolutely, the first one is collector's edition. So anybody with a lot of money wants to buy some collector's edition platinum, let me know.
Super. All right. What's the website?
AstroForge.io.
AstroForge.io. Are you still looking for investment? Because I think if the right people are listening, I'm sure they're going to be into this.
When you're running a deep tech company, and I think you're never not looking for investment. So It doesn't, absolutely. If anybody's interested, anybody wants to chat about it, shoot me an email, matt@astroforge.io. I'm always happy to chat or entertain these as we go forward.
All right, Matt, this was truly badass. Thank you for this.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
This has been the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next episode.